Cobalt blue, baby. It always looks classic, it always looks lovely, and in today's painting tutorial, that's exactly what we're all about. Hey friends, welcome back. My name is Shayda Campbell, and in today's beginner-friendly art tutorial, I'm sharing one of my favorite painting practices, and that is working with my favorite color, cobalt blue. Yes, we're going to use gouache. Gouache is very similar to watercolor. I did a little video on Instagram, got a lot of great responses, and you wanted to see a tutorial, so this is it. So grab a tube of paint. Watercolor or gouache will work well for this, and I love cobalt blue, but any color is fine. You'll need a number 4 or 6 round brush, and then some cold pressed 140-pound paper. I'm using my favorite Strathmore sketchbook. All supplies are linked in the video description. So with gouache, it's going to come out of the tube the consistency of toothpaste, and then you're going to mix in a whole lot of water. And the nice thing about gouache is that it can be wonderfully opaque, but it can also be wonderfully transparent, just like watercolor. So what we'll do with this exercise is we'll take it to its most transparent state where it's almost all water, and then we'll also get it into that very, very opaque state. So you can kind of see the range of gouache. It's pretty amazing. And the first thing I want to do is just mix so much water into that gouache that I'm basically painting with water tinted with like a drop of blue. And we will start by painting all these messy little flowers. They sort of look like we're going to do a wild bouquet of little chamomile or little mini daisies. So you're just painting these little starbursts, really messy. You don't have to think about it too much. What I want you to really concentrate on is just getting that paint as light and transparent as you possibly can. Later on, you're going to want these flowers to be very, very light so they stand out against the really dark blue. So just practice really watering down that paint. Once you've painted a burst of those flowers, like a little grouping of them, we're going to do a few horizontal lines beneath them. That will be the top of the jar. And then using that really watery light paint, we're just going to sketch in the shape of a little jar. And you can make it any shape you want. Mine's kind of wider at the top and then goes in at the base. We're also going to put a little circle on the jar for the label. But we're just working out the shape. Put a bit of a semicircle at the base of the jar. That's going to make it appear to be more three-dimensional because it is a glass jar. Then here's where it gets really fun. We're going to pick up a little bit of darker gouache, and it's not a bad idea to have a little tester paper or use a different page in your sketchbook so you can see the darker color. So this has a lot more paint in it, but it's still very watery and very fluid. And with that darker paint on the brush, that more opaque paint, we're going to start painting vertical lines in behind those flowers. And you can also add some detail to the jar. So kind of go around the label and then add a bit of an oval shape on both sides of that label to mark the top of the water. Working with this dark fluid blue, we're also going to put stamens on these flowers. So just a little grouping of dots or a little circle or oval shape at the center of each of those flowers. Or you can place the stamen quite low and make the flower appear a little bit angled. So yeah, giving that really nice dark center to the flowers, all of a sudden those light petals are starting to really pop, and then adding these sort of sketchy vertical lines and brushstrokes in behind the flowers will make them appear, that the floral blossom, the petals are really light and all the stems and leaves are really dark. So you're creating this really beautiful contrast and you're really seeing what that single color of paint can do. I love painting like this because it frees you up to think about value. You're just working with that one single color. You don't have to think about mixing colors or anything. It's just all about watering down the color and then building it back up to make a painting that has lots of detail and contrast within it. So what I'm doing here is just kind of hinting at the idea of lots of stems and branches in behind by just doing little messy vertical paint strokes. And then on the outside edge, sort of around the perimeter of those flowers, I'm letting those wispy brush strokes give way to little bits of grass and leaves, that sort of thing. Just making those tiny little shapes. As I bring those little wisps of grass up or those little stems up, I'm also going to take that super, super light watery blue, maybe add a few more flowers kind of on the outer perimeter of the bunch, just to give the bouquet a really, really wild look. You can just see me doing that there. And the flower shapes are very free, very organic and fluid. And then I want to continue the darkness of the stems and branches down below here. So skip the area where the ribbing or the top of the jar will be and just bring those messy vertical lines down, making a dark area, but skipping the very top of the jar. And you can just put a few little horizontal lines along there. Okay, that's looking really good. What we're going to do now is just take water and wet the area of the jar below that water line. And it's okay if it looks a little light blue. You know, of course, when you go over your paint with a wet brush, it's going to seep out a little. That's okay. We want to start creating the look of water and shadow, and we'll bring those stems down a little, but below the water, we want them to be a little blurred. So if the area is wet, it's a great way to just kind of give that watery, blurry look. So continuing with your dark blue to bring the branches down to the base of the jar there, and everything might be a little blurred and messy, and that's okay. And I'm going to darken the area along the top of the water, maybe darken the left-hand side a little. I might add a few more little horizontal lines along the top of the jar, being careful to leave a highlight there, careful not to let that get too dark. We don't want it to blend in with all the branches and stems. I am making the left-hand side of the jar a little darker than the right. So I'm deciding that, you know, my light source is on the right, and that's just stuff I'm making up so we can make one side slightly darker and one side slightly brighter, just to give the painting interest. Bringing out some of those little branches and leaves, maybe adding one or two more flowers. I mean, at this point, we're just looking at our piece and saying, what are the finishing touches that I want to incorporate? Yours doesn't have to look exactly like mine. You could have one flower that's sort of shooting off, you know, to the left or something. You could have a big fern popping out the top. You get to make those decisions. One thing that we will do together is add a little bit of a shadow, and I'm going to put it sort of in front and to the left, since we know that the light is coming from the right. So I just did a very watery shadow, and then I'm also using a watery paint to just put like a little hint of blue on the label. Now you could add some words to that label, you know, strawberry jam, or hint at words. Sometimes with my paintings, I'll do like kind of messy, barely there letters, but today I just want to leave it blank, and I think that just speaks to the spirit of the painting, which is very loose and free. Just adding a few kind of finishing details. Some of those stems needed darkening. I'll go in and add just little wispy lines along the edges of the flower petals, and that helps them to look more like daisies with those long, thin petals. And then finally, I will sign and date my work, and we are all done. Thank you so much for watching today, friends, and for painting along. I so appreciate you being here. If you would like to get a coloring page of this image to potentially help with your own painting, head over to Patreon. It's just $3 a month to become a patron and get weekly bonus content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.